Welcome. So today, we're going to get into something really personal, something I think a lot of us have felt. We're talking about the mechanics behind why a woman's inner radiance, that vital sexual energy, can sometimes feel like it's dimming, or maybe even gone out completely. We're going to uncover why this happens, and more importantly, how you can start to find your way back.
Let's kick things off with this core idea. Your vitality? It is not an on-off switch. It's so much more delicate than that. Think of it like a living, breathing thing, a garden that needs a very specific, sanctuary-like environment to really flourish. It's alive, it's responsive, and it absolutely needs care.
But the world we live in today is just full of things that can act like kill switches for that inner light. And you know what? Understanding exactly what these switches are is the absolute first step you can take toward reclaiming your energy, your pleasure, and that incredible radiance.
All right, let's dive into the first and honestly the most powerful of these switches, chronic stress. Our source material calls it the primary assassin of our feminine energy, and trust me, there's a very real biological reason for that.
Okay, so picture your body's operating system. It has a super strict chain of command, and from an evolutionary perspective, its number one, top-of-the-list priority is just survival. The program for thriving, for feeling amazing and radiant and turned on, well, that program gets immediately shut down if your body thinks it's in any kind of danger. It makes sense, right? Running from a tiger is always going to take precedence over feeling good.
Now, at the very center of this biological tug-of-war is this one crucial molecule called pregnenolone. It's nicknamed the mother hormone, and for good reason. It's the fundamental building block your body uses to create the hormones for both survival, like cortisol, and the hormones for desire, like your estrogen and progesterone. It's the source for both.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This slide shows exactly how your body decides to use this precious resource. So look at what happens when you're at peace. Your body takes that pregnenolone and makes the good stuff, the hormones that fuel your vitality and your libido. But then, look what happens when you're under stress. Your body pulls off what's called the pregnenolone steal. It literally hijacks all the raw material it can find to pump out the stress hormone cortisol. It robs your sexuality to fuel your survival. And this biological theft, it has very, very real consequences. It can lead to what feels like a total hibernation of your reproductive system, physical dryness, and just profound emotional burnout. It's that feeling of being cold and shut down and just contracted. This isn't just a feeling, it's your actual physiology at work.
So let's move on to our second kill switch, which builds right on top of this. And that's the internal battle between your mind and your body. A battle between what we can call the director and the lover.
So many of us are taught to be logical, efficient, to live in our heads. But here's the catch. Sexual energy doesn't live in your intellect. It lives exclusively below the neck. The source calls this the severed head effect, where your body basically just becomes a taxi for your brain. And this slide, wow, it illustrates this perfectly. It's like you have these two competing parts of you. On one side, you've got the director. That's your neocortex, and it's all about logic, to-do lists, and analysis. And on the other side, you've got the lover, your ancient limbic brain, which speaks the language of sensation, feeling, warmth, and just being present. So here's the crucial takeaway. The second you start making mental grocery lists, or analyzing how you look, or observing yourself, you've switched into director mode. And you have to hear this. Analysis is the primary executioner of orgasm. The lover part of you demands your full presence, not your detached observation. And that leads us straight into our third factor, the way we've been taught to treat pleasure itself, not as something essential, but as this optional extra we can get to if we have time. We're so often taught that prioritizing our own pleasure is selfish, right? That it belongs at the very bottom of our endless to-do list. But physiologically, that's just flat out wrong. Your body actually requires pleasure to function at its best. So I want you to start thinking of it like a vital vitamin that you've been told for years you don't really need. And what's really fascinating and honestly a little scary is what happens when you consistently push down those small desires. The neural pathways in your brain that are supposed to light up with joy and arousal, well, they literally start to fade away from disuse. Your brain can actually forget what pleasure even feels like. But here's the good news. You can rebuild those pathways. And it starts with really small, really conscious acts of sensory pleasure. I'm talking about truly deeply tasting a piece of fruit, or just stopping for a moment to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. or really letting yourself get lost in a piece of music.
When you do these little things, you're actually retraining your entire nervous system. You're strengthening your capacity for deep joy, which in turn strengthens your capacity for orgasm. Every small yes to pleasure is practice for a much bigger yes in every single part of your life.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the invisible forces that can put our vitality on total lockdown. Trauma, and all those cultural messages that we soak up without even realizing it. We've all heard about the fight or flight response to danger, right? But there is a third, equally powerful response, and it's especially relevant here, and that is to freeze. When the body feels unprotected or completely overwhelmed, it can just numb itself out, so it doesn't have to feel the pain. Now, trauma in this context isn't always one single huge catastrophic event. It can be the slow buildup of experiences where your body just didn't feel safe. It could be a partner's constant emotional coldness, intimacy that you engaged in out of a sense of duty, or that powerful freezing energy of shame.
And this numbing freeze response, this sort of internal frost, it can last for years, long after whatever caused it is over. It can effectively turn your pelvis, which is the very seat of your creative and sexual energy, into a silent, disconnected, and forgotten part of yourself. And then, on top of our personal histories, we internalize these invisible cultural chains. You know the messages, good girls don't, that our sexuality is a duty to someone else, or that constant crushing pressure to be physically perfect. All of these things force us to watch ourselves instead of actually live inside ourselves. The source material just puts it perfectly with this quote. So much of our conditioning is about what we should do, what we should feel, what we should want. But desire doesn't respond to should. The moment intimacy becomes an obligation, that beautiful light just goes out.
Breaking these chains, it's a truly radical act. It's a rebellion. And it starts by asking yourself this incredibly powerful and revealing question. Answering it honestly, even if it's just to yourself, can start to show you the path back to your authentic, vital self. So, there you have it. We've walked through the 4 major kill switches: chronic stress, living in your head, suppressing pleasure, and the invisible prisons of trauma and conditioning. Just understanding these mechanisms is a huge, crucial first step. And now, you hold the power to choose what comes next. So, I'll leave you with this. What will your second step be?